and welcome back to my channel. Welcome to this video where we are gonna rank all of my Natasha Denona palettes. I honestly don't know how many they are. I will pop the number up here of how many they are. I do have some big palettes, I have some midi palettes, I have some mini palettes, I also have some in the old, like, is it only one maybe in the old squishy packaging? Well, I think I have two, and then a bunch in the plastic packaging. I am not gonna take into consideration whether or not these are limited edition, discontinued, all of that. I'm just gonna rank them in the order that I think they are the best and the most interesting according to my taste, but also according to like how they are set up, like if they make sense using. And if you haven't been here before, if this is your first video here, hello, my name is Angie. I'm such a lover of beauty makeup. I love everything beauty makeup related, especially things that are a little bit more on the colorful side, like this look right here. I did film this look and it is coming later on, or it's already live. I'm not 100% sure, check the description box, but if you want to see some more makeup in the timeline, don't forget to subscribe because I upload, well, normally 5 videos a week, but right now I'm uploading every day until Christmas. I am going to be ranking these palettes. It's going to be not necessarily in the order of quality, because I think all of these palettes are good quality, except the one that I'm going to put in the bottom that I feel doesn't necessarily live up to the quality of the others, or maybe the one that is second to last as well. We'll get to that in a little bit. And then we're mainly more going to be about how user-friendly I think they are, how diverse they are, and how much they appeal to my taste. And I am a lover of color. I love things that are a little bit colorful, but I also love things that are not necessarily maybe neutral. If they're neutral, I like them to be more dramatic. I like contrasts, but I also really love like muted colors. I'm gonna be honest, if I can pick and choose, I love colors that are like colorful, but like a little earthy, maybe muted, a little bit mysterious. English, not my first language, or like jewel tones. So you're gonna see that when I rank these palettes, and if you don't agree with me, please let me know down in the comments which ones are your favorites, and maybe I'm missing out. There is a couple that I don't own, maybe I'm missing out. I have bought all of these palettes myself with my own money, except the midi retro one and the biba one. Those two palettes were sent to me as PR. All the other ones I bought myself, but this video is not sponsored, just so you know. And if you're wondering about my look, I will link the things that I'm using down in the description box in case you are interested. And if the video is live where I'm doing this look, I will also link that down below. Because I'm not 100% sure in which order I'm making these. I'm trying to get my Vlogmas done. Not 100% sure that I will make it, but I'm doing the best I can. At the bottom position, I am gonna put Lila. I don't necessarily think that this is a bad palette. This isn't a bad palette. This is the first palette that I tried from Natasha Denona. This is when Natasha Denona was launched in Sweden, which was quite later than it was in like other parts of the world, let's put it like that. Sweden is a little bit behind, not behind, but like when it comes to getting releases and getting like stores or getting makeup releases or getting stuff like that, we're always a little bit behind, but we're a small country. It's natural. But when this one came to Sweden, when Natasha Denona like launched in Sweden, I ended up buying this one because I thought like, I really want to try Natasha Denona. I've heard so many good things about the brand, and I will be honest, if I had only tried this palette and based my experience on the brand on this palette, I might not have bought any more things from Natasha Denona, but I heard people saying that this wasn't a good representation of palettes that were to come, so to speak. They were saying that this is good, but not necessarily as good as she can be. And I 1,000,000% agree with those reviews. This isn't a bad palette. If you find this on sale, I've heard rumors that it's being discontinued, but that was actually then it was restocked at the Natasha Denona main website. I only think that it might be like disappearing from like Sephora's and stuff. A couple of these palettes are no longer available at Swedish Sephora. They have been on a discount and they've been sold out, like this one. If you find this on a discount, I don't think you'd be disappointed, but also know that even though some of these shades are beautiful, like this like dark purpley, these are not like an actual like representation of how good Natasha Denona can be. These are beautiful dark metallics. Some of them are leaning maybe a little bit more on the satin side because of how dark they are, and they are stunning. This one is truly beautiful. It is a dark burgundy red with like a almost olivey green sheen. It is truly a stunning shade. I just think that she can do better. Like Natasha Denona can do. Why did I start with these dark shades? I just think the brand can do better than this palette. It's not a bad palette, but it's most definitely not my favorite palette from the brand. because I think the formula can be better. And I feel the same about this one. I actually really like, this is the mini tropic. I don't have the big tropic. That one came out and was popular before Natasha Denona came to Sweden, and that palette I think never came to Sweden. I really love these two shades. These two greens, am I gonna really be swatching this entire? Maybe. These two greens are incredible. Like, these two greens are so good. This blue is a little tough. It's not as pigmented. These two like matte shades here, I personally don't think necessarily match the vibe of this palette. And I understand that in the beginning, this was the lowest bottom row of the Tropic palette, was meant like an accent. And I do think it fits better as an accent in a mini palette. But that's the thing. I think that Natasha Denona has better colorful shadows in her bigger palette than in this, and for that reason this palette doesn't really serve a purpose as an accent palette because it doesn't bring anything super special. These are nice, but you can find similar shades to these in her bigger palettes, so I think you would have been better off just buying a bigger palette. Maybe I even have a makeup wipe here. Who would have thought? I mean, I don't use them for my face, but they're perfect for my hands. But I'm gonna be honest, I think this might be discontinued. It's not a bad palette, but as an accent palette, I don't think it serves its purpose just because of the reason that you can find better colorful shades in her other palettes. So I would say, I don't know if it's discontinued, but if it is available, I would say just buy another mini palette instead. Just buy another one. This is gonna ruffle some feathers. Don't cancel me because of this position. Here we're coming into, this is really good quality. From now on, I think every one of these palettes, according to me, is the really good Natasha Denona quality. Sometimes people forget that the pigments, some pigments are easier to formulate with than other pigments. Brown pigments are really easy to formulate with. Rarely do brands really mess up neutral shadows. And that is also a reason why some brands will start with neutral shadows or continue to release them, because as soon as they get into more colorful shadows, those are trickier to work with and they're trickier to formulate. That's what I've heard from most brands that I have talked to behind the scenes, and also something that I've noticed on my journey reviewing makeup. It is harder to work with a colorful matte shadow than it is to work with a matte neutral shadow. Shimmers, usually it's a bit same, but even the best matte blue shadow will still need a little extra work because you can't just be sweeping it like this. You're gonna look sick. So when some people say that they think that some colorful palettes from Natasha Denona are not formulated the same way as her neutral palettes, I respectfully disagree because I feel like it's the same formula. It's just that colorful shadows are harder to formulate. It is not as easy to get a matte blue shadow to perform the same way as a matte brown. It's just really, really hard. I think that this one is, the quality is really nice. I know that this is the Glam palette. This is so many people's absolute favorite Natasha Denona palette. I just think that this is such a one-trick pony for being this many shades. The quality is beautiful. This palette though, it does lack my favorite formula from Natasha Denona, which is her cream to powder formula. The cream to powder formula is such a beautiful buildable formula that you can use on top of powder or under powder or sandwiched in between to make them even more intense. I do demonstrate this technique in a couple of my Natasha Denona like tutorials if you want to see what I mean. This palette doesn't have that, and I also will say, and I will talk about that when we come to the bronze palette, which I think is like the counterpart of this one. That one goes in different directions. There are like red and browns and more goldy tones, and there's also like almost like a dark purpley one. This one doesn't have any of that. This is just taupes. And there's nothing wrong with that, but for me, a person who doesn't even like neutrals that much, it just becomes a little, this could have been such a great 9 pan. I understand why it's in this format. I just wish that there was some kind of a twist to it. It doesn't have to be like a pink, but it's just a little bit of a one-trick pony. And I'm gonna be honest, if I swatch all the shimmers side by side, yeah, they're not dupes, but they're also, yeah, they're very, very similar to each other. The next one I'm going to mention is a palette that didn't really get the hype that maybe I think that it deserved at the time, and this is the Cranberry palette. Am I lying? Cranberry palette. This palette has 3 of the most incredible shimmers that Natasha Denona has ever released. This like duochrome here, this is a peach with a gold to a pink sheen. It is one of the prettiest peach metallics in the game. It is just so incredibly pretty. I've actually brought this palette out to use that shade on more than one occasion, which is very rare for me because usually I mix and match palettes based on the mattes they have. But this peach is just really something else. It's so pretty. These are cream to powders, but they are not as good as the cream to powders that she has now. They're definitely workable. I do think though that she would have been better off putting one cream to powder and one powder because they mix so good with each other, and then you can really build it to the intensity or sheer it out to whatever like result you would like to have. I've done looks with this. I haven't had any problems with it, but I personally think it would have been even better if it was one cream to powder and one powder. And also she has perfected her cream to powder formula even more since this one. Again, this is a lot of people's favorite palette, but it's not my favorite color scheme. This is the Mini Retro. It's not bad, I like it, but it's very light. It's very light, and I like to build with mattes, and I don't think that these two mattes really go together. These are all nice shades, and if you like these kind of shades and this is something you're looking at this and you're like, wow. If I want something more khaki green from Natasha Denona, I'm gonna reach for something else. We'll talk about that in a bit. Natasha Denona makes incredible green eyeshadows. For that reason, I really hope that she will come out with the midi palette with just more greens, because and that's what people were hoping with the retro palette, but I don't like this dusty rose and almost grayish khaki. That's not my favorite aesthetic, so I'm kind of happy that that's not what the Mini Retro is. Good quality, not my absolute favorite. I like the Mini Sendo more. Again, this is a neutral palette, but this one is so pretty, and I really like this. Like, it's like a muted, like pinky, I'm not making any sense, pinky like clay matte, and it is just so, these would be so pretty together. It's just such a nice matte, and I love shades like this. If I'm gonna go neutral, this is really nice. I really like this as a little neutral palette. It has a bit of an undertone and a bit of a twist to it that I appreciate more than the retro, that I personally think is a little bit too dusty and a little bit too light for my personal preference. I know that this palette is some of people's absolute favorite palettes from Natasha Denona, and I understand. I also think the biba is really nice. I very much appreciate that there is a brown row, like almost a mustardy brown row, then there is more of a clay, almost reddish brown row, and a more cool tone row that actually has a straight up gray and an incredible cream to powder black. This one has 1, 2, 3, I think, cream to powders. No, 4. This one, the dark slate one, is also a cream to powder, and it has 3 shimmers, right? All the 3 shimmers, it's basically a dark neutral shimmer, a medium neutral shimmer, and a light neutral shimmer. I don't dislike this palette in any way, shape, or form. It's just not a palette that I would reach for myself to do something on its own. I think that I would have put this palette a little higher had this one had a matte white or a matte super light color, because this is not light enough for me to be an inner corner highlight, which is not a problem really. I'm just talking about my preference. I like when palettes go from really light to really dark in both the shimmers and the mattes, and this one is just lacking one really light matte, because when I go for neutral looks, I very rarely go into the shimmers. I don't love a neutral shimmer. I usually do an all matte neutral look, and for that reason this palette is lacking just a little bit. This is a great palette though. This is a great color scheme, but if we look to the, you can see that this one is the big palette. Ooh, let's not drop stuff. This is the big palette. The biba is the $129, and this is the $65. And for that reason, there's so much background noise today. I hope you're not hearing it. And for that reason, I think that the bronze palette is better. I think the bronze palette is better because this is, first of all, this color story is really inspiring for a neutral palette for me. It has really dark ones, and it has some light, not really light ones. I'm gonna be honest, that's the only part where this is lacking. This has a mid-tone to dark. It's lacking on the light department, but I can always bring in other palettes for that. But this one has some reds, it has some golds and like mustards. It has this like almost dark plummy corner, and then some more browns. This one has the same problem as the Glam palette though, and that is that when you swatch all of these shadows out, some of them are incredibly similar to the point where I'm like, who needs this many golds? This one is my favorite though. This is called Bliss. I don't have my glasses on. This one. And this one is a red base with a lime green shift. Almost like the shadow that I showed you in the Lila palette. It's just that this is a little lighter. It's a lighter red with a lighter green shift. I wore this on my lid when I was going to an event lately, and it's just a really fun, bright color that I really enjoy. This palette lacks an inner corner highlight for me. If you're my skin tone, you will probably need to bring something in if you are like me and you like something that's a little bright in the corners. That's not a very big problem, but I thought I should mention it. But I do think that that is a really well-rounded palette. It has some cream to powders, it has some duochromes like this one, it has some smooth metallics, some more sparkly metallics, some regular mattes. It is a really well-rounded palette. It's just for me, it lacks something that's bright enough to be in the inner corner, but that's just a minor minus in the grand scheme of things. I think that that is a very well-rounded warm neutral palette. Personally though, I prefer the Sunrise palette. I think this might be discontinued or it's deeply discounted. I will link whatever I can of these palettes down below. If I can't find it, it might be that it's discontinued. So don't shoot the messenger if it's discontinued. I am not 100% keeping up with things that I already bought, I already own it. I think this one came out summer, was it 2020 or 2019? One of the two. Really pretty palette. It is actually quite similar to the bronze palette. Wow. And what I mean, they are similar, maybe this one, the Sunrise, came out in 2019 and the bronze in 2020, could that be correct? And what I mean with they are quite similar isn't necessarily that they are dupes or that if you have one you don't need the other. That's not what I mean. What I mean is that the Sunrise palette is like the popped up version. You turn the saturation or the colors in editing all the way to the top. Because the bronze is like a muted, more neutral version of the Sunrise. Because the Sunrise is also something that has a pop of that plummy purple, yellows, reds. It is slightly similar. And I've done some really nice sunset or sunrise whatever you want to say. I don't own the Sunset palette. I bought this one instead. This is the $65 palette, and this one has some really nice ones, like the duochromes in this one. This is a red to a gold. You have this one that is it's like a purple warm base with a periwinkle purple sheen to it. This is an incredible shade, you can see. This is just really pretty, and it just gives a pop. It's just a really nice sunset palette. It's good quality. I really enjoy it. I would say for me, the thing that is missing in this one, because here you have light to dark, for me there's no cream to powder in this palette, and I personally prefer when there is at least one cream to powder because it makes building these shadows so easy and so versatile. Next one is a palette that was released this year, and this is the Sendo palette. This is the bigger version of the small Sendo palette. I think this is such a fun and interesting color story, and this is exactly what I said in the beginning when I said I like colorful shadows, but I actually like when they're a little earthy, a little muted. This is exactly what this is. This is like a colorful palette, but made by Mother Earth. I really like it. These greens are really nice, and then you have a cool tone khaki over here. Red, pink. There is like a peach gold duochrome here that is just absolutely stunning. And then you have Yama that is a duochrome. I've had really fun with this palette. I know some people didn't like it, and I feel like the main critique I saw of this palette is that they thought the color story was a little challenging. I personally don't think that there's any difference in quality with this palette compared to the other Natasha Denona palettes, but I will say that maybe the color story is a little bit more challenging. This one is a cream to powder, this is a cream to powder. Ooh, there's one of my hairs. I think those are the two cream. Oh, this one, Mindful, is also cream to powder, and you can, like I said, layer and build upon those and make them super dark and yummy. If you use this one in the crease and then build this one on top, even though it seems like it's backwards, and that's why I said I think that this might be a little bit more challenging, you can make incredible smoky, dimensional looks. So think of the cream to powder as a colored eye base that you can intensify your shadows, but you can also build them on powders or under powders or in between. They're very easy to work with in that way. I have probably videos on all of these palettes. I will leave my playlist down below with all of my Natasha Denona videos in case you want to check back or see some looks or anything, because I know for sure that I had looks up with this one. I think it's really fun. Oh, this is a green to powder too, I think, the calm one, now that I look at it. I don't really like this one. And I especially like playing with these and wearing this one as my lip color. Big fan. If you like the idea of a mini palette with a green theme, I would definitely recommend any of these two instead. I think I personally prefer this one, so let's rank this one under and then this one on top. This is the mini Metropolis. It's the one that came out this year. This basically has it has 3 shades from the Metropolis. These shades here, it's 2 very lovely metallics. It is a mustard matte, and then there is a new shade which is like a khaki. It is almost a khaki green brown. It has a very khaki undertone, and then there is this matte bone colored matte. They say it's from the Biba palette, but who cares? It's just a matte bone color. I don't do much with this except have it as my inner corner highlight, and for that purpose, it's fine, let's be honest. Really like this color story, and it is a nice sampling of the green gold side of the Metropolis palette. I mean, if I had the option between this one and the Metropolis palette, it's a very easy decision because the Metropolis palette is ingenious, but this is still very nice quality. I really liked playing with this, and I think it's a really nice palette. I don't think that anyone would be like super disappointed with the quality if they got it. If you ever wanted to sample any of the Natasha Denona quality, I would definitely say that some of the mini palettes that I'm ranking more at the top definitely represent the formula that you can find in the big palettes. This is the mini gold. I don't own the gold, it's been discontinued as well. I just thought that it was a little bit I'm more into neutrals now than I was when that one was hyped. Let's just put it like that. This one has some really nice colors, and this matte actually goes deeper than you might think when you get it on the eyes. It's very pigmented and very buildable. So this is a very well-rounded palette with golds and khakis, and then this dark shadow if you want to like have something to deepen up with. You can definitely deepen up with the satin. Satins are great for deepening up with. Don't let anyone tell you differently. For me, this is lacking an inner corner highlight, but again, it's a mini palette. It can't have everything for everyone. I'm okay with that. Next, I'm gonna put this one. Y'all knew that this was gonna be a little farther to the top because I love colorful shadows, and I had so much fun with the Circle Loco palette. This is one of the $129 palettes. She said that because of this is limited edition and when it's gone, it's gone. Basically, she wanted to give people that really love colorful shadows more product in each pan. I still would have preferred if it was a smaller palette. I don't think anyone, when I say anyone, I don't mean anyone, but I don't think anyone I know is out here panning eyeshadows. At least not the ones that I know. Oh my god, the door rang and I forgot about everything. Where was I? I was talking about the Circle Loco. I'm sorry, I don't remember what I was talking about. We had a visitor and then stuff happened, and listen, it is what it is. I don't remember what I was talking about. I like this palette. I really do. I really do like this palette. I will say that I wish that this palette had one really, really deep matte. Like if this was a really, really deep, like dark blue. But other than that, I do think it's a really nice palette. Is it a little bit disjointed? Yes. In the video where I'm reviewing this, I did swatch this palette instead of swatching it like in the way that it was meant, like put out, because I think that they were trying to do this like harlequin pattern when they were putting the shadows in, which is a little bit jumbled, a little bit chaotic, but I swatched this in color family in the video where I was reviewing this, and it looks a little bit more cohesive. So if you have a problem seeing beyond this, I will say check out my video. And this is most of Natasha Denona palettes are like this, so you can poke them out and you can rearrange them. So that is an option in case you are interested. I'm sorry for like totally dropping the ball on like where I was, but stuff got in the way. This is the Trio Chrome palette. This was the holiday palette of last year. I feel like this is a little bit of an unsung hero. I've liked this palette more and more since after reviewing it, because I remember after reviewing it, I'm like, it's a nice palette, it's nice. I feel like this palette, it's lacking a little, like I wish that like this one went a little deeper. I wish that this one went a little darker, but all in all, this is a really cool palette. It has these 3 she calls them chromes, so that's why they're Trio Chromes. They are a little, almost like They are multichromes, but they're almost like a little bit, I don't want to say cloudy, but they're not as like bright and super high shine. I don't know if you can see anything, but if you were interested in this palette, like I said, I do have a video up on this, but they're not as high shine and super bright as like a Clionadh multichrome, for example, but they're nice and they're definitely really pretty on the eyes, and they definitely are multichromes. But if you were hoping that this was going to be like Clionadh multichromes together with some Natasha Denona mattes, maybe that's not exactly what it is, but they are really nice. I will say this is a really nice palette. It's a very unique color story, and I especially like mixing and matching this palette with other thing. I did a look quite recently where I did a full face of Natasha Denona, and I used this one and I deepened it up with another dark green. And that was just so pretty, and I really enjoyed the look. So I do think that this is a really nice palette, but maybe it is a little bit, it's just a little bit of an unsung hero. I also wish that this had one of the like cream to powders, because then you would be able to bring those mattes even darker. Even darker. The next palette isn't necessarily a palette that I like using on its own. I don't mind it. I don't mind it because I have made a video where I did 2 looks with the mini xenon palette. I don't mind using this to do a full look, but this is my companion palette of all companion palettes, because this one has a matte black and a matte almost white. It's just such a nice palette to bring to add to any look, to be honest. And then you have these 2 grays here that you can do a cool tone like crease if you want to. The silver is really pretty. You can match this with any palette, and I love deepening up a look with a matte black. Really do enjoy it. I'm so happy I have this one. But I will say that if you don't like cool tones, or if you're the kind of person that don't mix and match palettes, maybe this isn't the perfect for you, but for me this is just the perfect like companion palette. I feel a little bit surprised how much I really enjoyed this one, but I think the Natasha Denona Mini Love is the best mini palette. I just think that this is so well-rounded. This one has 2 mattes, one that is like a dusky purpley mauve, and then there is a dark plum that's just so wonderful. And then we have this very sparkly high shine metallic duochrome that is like a burgundy to a gold. It's extremely pretty. And then 2 more like classic shimmers, one more like it is a pinky leaning beige, and then it is a slightly corally peachy pink. This duochrome is just so pretty. I don't know if the duochrome is showing, but it is incredibly stunning, and you can just take this in so many directions. You can do an all matte look with this one as well, because you have a light one and a dark one. You can do something really dramatic with the duochrome, or you can keep it a bit more muted. And if you're my skin tone, maybe like 1 step up or down, you can use this one just to create a little more like an everyday dimension, and use this one on the lid, and you will have something that's more on the wearable or more not so dramatic side. I just think that it's a genius mini palette. And I think it's like, it is her best mini palette, and this shadow is just so pretty. I also really love that these are new shades. These are not shades that are existing in the Love palette, these are new shades. I love that when the mini palette is like a complement to the big palette. That is something that I really love. Okay, my number 3 is the palette from this year, and this is the Midi Retro palette. I know some people were really disappointed that this wasn't the mini retro but in a bigger size, but like I said before, I wasn't the biggest fan of the mini retro, so for me, I'm so much happier with this like berry wonderfulness. Like I said, this one and the Biba palette are the 2 palettes that I have received in PR. Just making it 100% clear about that, but I still would have bought this had I not been giving it as PR. It's such a beautiful palette. This one has several cream to powders, so that you are able to layer and just build and make this incredibly deep and sultry and sexy. I do have at least 3 looks up. I think I'm using this one in 3, yeah, I'm using this one in 2 looks where I'm only using this, and then 2 more looks when I'm using this together with some other things. So if you're interested in getting some inspo on how you can use this, I definitely have videos for you, and I honestly think that this is such a beautiful palette, and I like, again, not like the Glam palette, because this isn't a one-trick pony. You could go more pinky mauve, you could go more on the like the taupey neutral side. What is this background? I don't understand. And then you have the full-on berry look, and you also have a super light matte, which is something that I appreciate so much. I use this all the time. The number 2 spot is actually the palette that I have on my eyes today. This is the Love palette. I think that this is either discontinued or on its way to be discontinued. In Sweden, this has been on sale for quite some time, and I don't think that you'll be able to find this in Sweden anymore, but I do know that there are places that you can still get this, and I will try and find it and I will link it down below in case you are interested. This is a beautiful palette, and this is, you can go so many ways with this palette. It is just such a genius color story. Like I said, I did this all matte, like burgundy red with the, I have this one, the first color, the like almost like a powdery peach on my lid. I'm only using this one that's called First, this one that's called Heart, and this one that's called Heartbeat. Those are the only 3 shades that I used for this look. You can also go a bit more purple on this side. You have a really beautiful silver here, and then you have the reds and the pinks and like the plums and this beautiful commitment that is a cream to powder, so you can layer and you can then put powders on top of it. If you want to change it to like a more red tone, you can put the red matte on top of it and you can go as deep as you want. I really like that there are so many different like dimensions of the shimmer in this palette as well. Like you have the duochrome, this is a pink, bubblegum pink to a gold. Then you have the more sparkly metallic, this is a plum with like a periwinkle sparkle. And then you have the more satin, this is a satin red, but it still has some sparkle in it. It is a super beautiful and sultry color, and like 3 colors next to each other, all 3 different formulas that just gives some like, I don't know, just gives a little bit of an interesting like touch to the palette, and that is something that I really appreciate with Natasha Denona palettes, that it's not just one formula in the palette. You can get like cream to powder, mattes, duochrome, satin, metallics, more sparkly shades, even toppers sometimes, and I really do appreciate that because I feel like it gives so much more versatility to a palette when you can mix and match different formulas and just get different results depending on what you're in the mood for. And like I said, did film this look, I don't know if it's live, check the description box. Really like this palette. I'm kind of sad to see it go, but I do hope in the future we will see another palette from Natasha Denona that has matte reds in it, because these matte reds were really good, depending if it's still available or not. There's no like, I don't think anyone's surprised that the Metropolis is #1. I think this is such a great palette. This is a little bit bigger as well, and I feel like this is just so beautiful. These like greens, there's a lot of cream to powder in this palette, and that might be why I think it's so beautiful, because this just brings so much. Remember how I said that there were 3 shades from the Metropolis that was in the mini Metropolis? It's this one here, the metallic green, the golden metallic here, and the mustard matte here. Those are the shades that are in the mini palette. All in all, this is just a beautiful palette that has mattes, matte to shimmers, satin, metallics, sparkly metallics. It has just everything, and yeah, some of these shades are just so incredibly good, like you don't know what to say about them. This is like a Christmas theme, but like made in the right way, because this was the Christmas palette in 2019. It's just such a beautiful palette. Oh my god, so hard to swatch with your little finger. But yeah, I really think that this is truly great formula altogether. You can go neutral, you can go jewel tone, you can go more on the murky green side, and then you have the mustards, and there's just, oh my lord, I am a mess. There's just so many options in this palette, but it still is like this one is the same size. This one is the same size almost as the big 129 palettes, and this Metropolis was 129, but this one has even more shades, and I don't mind that as long as they don't inflate like how big the palette is. There are so many ways you can go. This is just a grungy, neutral, yummy. Love this, like these 2 cream to powder greens here, absolutely stunning. I wore some greens from this palette at my wedding. I've said this so many times, but I think it's like one of those things that it's not a bad thing to mention, because it truly shows how much I love the palette and how much I trust the palette, that it's gonna not do me dirty on my big day. But yeah, I really think Metropolis is a beautiful palette. I do think it's sold out though, but you have had plenty of time to get it. You had 2 years. 2 years, don't come for me if you missed it. It's been available. And listen, if you didn't get a hold of it, don't feel sad. Natasha Denona comes out with, what is it, like 3 palettes this year. She had the Circle Loco, the Midi Retro, and the Midi Sendo. That was 3 palettes in 1 year. All three really nice palettes, pretty diverse palettes as well, so don't feel too sad about it. I'm sure there's gonna be some nice palettes next year as well, and I'm actually super excited. She has had the Love collection 2 Valentines in a row, so I'm wondering what she's gonna do this Valentine's. I hope we get a new red pink thing. I would not be sad about that. Let me know, do you agree with me with my ranking? Is any of your favorites at the bottom? If you love glam, please don't come for me. I just find the color story a little bit uninspiring, but I'm not mad at you if you think that that is your absolute favorite palette. No hard feelings, no hard feelings. Also, is there a palette that you love? I'm guessing a lot of people are gonna say gold, that you are surprised that I don't own. Like I said, I wasn't into neutrals when gold had its heydays, and now it's discontinued. And you know what? I'm not too sad about it. I'm not too sad about it. I hope she comes out with a similar color story in the future, but in the midi format. I think I would really like that, like the gold midi. I would really enjoy that. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you again tomorrow for a new video. Bye!